next session where I would for sure vote, like in between those two votes, to discuss the DAO community building from scratch, from Adam, and I know Griff wants to specifically doing that. So please let me know if you would like to transition like slowly, or if you would like to maybe explore it a bit. The previous topic should be.
I would be interested in checking the conversation about the building from scratch community, if you don't mind.
Sure. So maybe Adam can give some intro words to the topic and suggest the question or something.
Absolutely. It's very similar to what I said earlier. Things have changed a lot, and the space is so new overall. Like everything else I can Google the heck out of, but this is something that's so new. And I think someone mentioned it earlier, a lot of this knowledge is in each other's heads. And so the only way to really get it out of each other is just by meeting and connecting. And I'm glad that I finally have taken the step to start putting, getting in these meetings, etc. But, given not even the bear market, but just the really more the mature nature of the space, or immaturity of the space and the tools and the community building and how people feel, if you could redo everything. And it's great that Griff's here because he was there for like the DAO. What a fun name, like the first one, the DAO. I can only imagine, how different it is, and maybe his views on it and then everyone else's views on it, where they see working, not working, etc. Anything and everything would be super valuable. If anyone wants to jump in or start.
I mean, I can definitely start and see some lessons or things like even the DAO, right? The idea was the DAO would name itself, actually. It wasn't supposed to be the name. It was like, oh, we're going to launch, and then the DAO will vote to rename itself eventually. Names are, one learning there is names are really sticky. You can't start with a placeholder name. It will be the name. There's certain, and I think the larger level lesson is that some decisions, when starting the DAO, some decisions are going to be sticky, and it's better for a small group of people just to make it, to start it out. And some decisions need to be withheld until no, we will refuse to decide that until we've exited to the community, got enough stakeholder sentiment or stakeholder input so that we can do this in a legitimate way. Legitimacy is the DAO's most important currency, right? It's you think it's the DAO token and really it's this legitimacy. The DAO token doesn't have any value if stakeholders don't feel like their votes will actually be listened to. The other big thing that I think that we're still young on is and haven't figured out, but I really want to see figured out, is how to integrate reputation into these DAO structures. Capital tokens as voting tokens. I think it's important that capital has a voice, and I think market feedback is really valuable, and it's something nonprofits are traditionally missing. But I don't think that means, I think in DAOs we've gone too far to the other end of the spectrum, where it's all about market feedback and what does money want us to do. That's dumb. It should be a balance of labor, capital, expertise, and benefactors, right? And these four groups coming together as stakeholders and having clear ways to signal, I think will make really valuable contribution. Will make the DAO stronger. And the best way to do that is to somehow measure these things with reputation. How do you quantify these qualitative inputs of who is an expertise and who has contributed labor like that? Maybe that's easier to quantify, for instance, than expertise and benefactors. Maybe benefactors is easy to quantify. We got to figure these out. Being able to quantify qualitative contributions is something that I'm really excited about in DAOs, and there's a lot of progress being made. Other big lessons are I like this idea of exiting to community early, and you're doing it with a reputation token and not being too quick to get money involved, right? When money gets involved, things get weird. It's there's all these use cases of money, right? Or there's the unit of account, medium of exchange, and store of value. Andreas Antonopoulos says systems of control, which is something that crypto really uses. And it sounds really diabolical, but system of control can also be a valuable piece of the dynamic. But the fifth use case of money is destroying relationships. So in an early community, getting money involved is very risky because it has this destruction piece to it of the relational fabric of any group that it's involved in. So being careful and very thoughtful about how it's coming in is really, really important. So those are the biggest lessons that I would kind of distribute to anyone who's starting a DAO, food for thought. But there's of course way more. There's always more details. Those are the ones that come in.
Can I just ask to drill in on a few things, if you don't mind? As far as legitimacy is concerned, is that more of a team building, or the vision looks good, or that the stakeholders that might get involved, they believe in the project, that it will actually happen, or is it more of a, hey, these guys are honest?
I think integrity is really important to maintain legitimacy. There's all these, there's this idea of execution DAO or non-execution DAO, a token that just uses a snapshot and then a multi-sig actually executes it, versus an Aragon DAO where, token holders vote and then it gets executed and no one can stop it, right? And the big difference here is that the Aragon DAO it has legitimacy by default, right? And there's no way to stop this. As a token holder, your vote will impact the system because it's built in. Whereas there has to be some legitimacy. You have to have some trust that you're voting in a snapshot vote and the multi-sig will execute whatever was voted on. And ENS, for instance, had a very difficult decision with Brantley, and there was this whole drama because Brantley said some really bad things on Twitter 6 years ago, and the team of ENS said we don't want them to work with him anymore, and so they fired him. But he was on the board of the foundation, and the foundation is governed by the DAO, and token holders voted in Snapshot to keep him, actually, right? And Nick Johnson and the community, and the team that's really behind ENS, to maintain legitimacy, they followed that DAO vote. But if they could have, that they maintained legitimacy, and ENS benefits from that, right? Even though the team might want to actually kick him out. So yeah,
that helps. I guess similarly, this idea of reputation versus capital, benefactors, expertise. I know you guys are doing amazing work with reputation, and the capital's there, and benefactors are labor that's been done, tools like D-work or just capturing work being done. Have you seen anything to the expertise part of it, as far as an advisory board or people who have expertise in the space having more powerful on the decision making than just a regular person who has a lot of capital or is doing a lot of labor, et cetera? Is there any work being done there?
I mean, I would say the most successful organizations in crypto do this off chain. They have a strong advisory board. They bring like they do practice advice process, which I think is also another really critical piece of any DAO is to maintain, helps maintain legitimacy is the advice process. At least that's what's come out of the holacracy movement, and that's the terms that they use. So they get advice from experts, but there isn't like how do you get the on chain? How do we bring that on chain? How do we make that transparent? How do we make that a repeatable pattern that you don't have to be a CEO level type organization to know that? Of course, I need to bring expertise on. Like how do we make space for experts to be a stakeholder that's considered on and represented on chain so that it's transparent, right? Because this is the real benefit of doing things on chain. Like the challenges with doing things on chain, it's very difficult to change. You need audits and all these things. Like you become very rigid and less agile. But for that, you get transparency. You get permissionless. You get what's it called when you can like people can build off of it, like modular and I want to say like operative or something, but like interoperable. That's the word. You get interoperability, and you get some really cool things when you bring it on chain. So like for instance, for Giveth, we do a lot of stuff where the tokens are on chain and the power is interoperable and transparent, or at least you can see where the power is. But then because we want flexibility to change it later, and we don't want to pay for audits. Honestly, we don't have that kind of money to pay for audits all the time. We do a lot of stuff with Web2 models interfacing with on-chain structures. So like we just launched Give Power. All of that, when you go and boost a project, then you're voting. You're effectively using your on-chain tokens to vote. But it's more like a snapshot style. It's not even a snapshot style vote because we wanted to improve the UX and not make you sign every time you boost something. So we don't even post IPF hashes because the UX is so bad. So we took that out of scope, and it's all in just a database. So you kind of have to trust us to that these are the projects that are boosted. But we make it transparent. We show people's names basically, and you as an address can see that your voting power is being allocated correctly. But as a system, because it's not on chain, you kind of have to trust. You have to lean in to give us legitimacy. But we're taking that decision with a conscious approach, knowing that Giveth has a lot of legitimacy, and no people are going to trust us, thankfully. And that's worth leaning into so that we can be less rigid and see if our experiment's going to work, and then decide to eventually put it on chain. And making these decisions from like a high level of like not always just defaulting to we're going to put everything on chain or defaulting to we put nothing on chain, but making the decisions of when to intermix. Is important and like give power to your expertise consideration, right? Give power is completely plutocratic, but right now. Yeah. But and Give Power will always be plutocratic, but the ranking system that Give Power controls will have other inputs, and this is important for us. And we're developing like this cool product called Pairwise, where it doesn't matter how many. It'll be like two projects come up and you pick one or the other. It's like hot or not, but pairwise comparison, or like and make it good UX. But then we can integrate. Okay, well these people are credible impact assessors. Here's a token for you guys. You get 20% of the like ranking consideration. Verified projects on Giveth will have 20% of the impact on the rank. Anytime they come in and vote, they just they get one vote per verified projects, and making sure that your designs are going to have a way to consider expertise, labor, benefactors, right? And this is a piece of Give Power of ranking projects on the Give platform that we want to make sure exists.
Amazing. I hear you as far as mixing in these off-chain things like where necessary, but in the future getting there and being very clever about it as far as giving those people additional power to whatever system. I just want to ask one more question, then I'll open it up. I apologize for monopolizing this, but the last one's really sort of like a chicken and egg problem. You mentioned not bringing money in too early. How do you see it currently, especially in this market where by perhaps not introducing capital, how do you encourage and incentivize contributors, et cetera, the capital, the labor that anyone would pitch in?
Yeah, I'm not going to say it's easy, right? Yeah. In the end, a lot of the times you do have like maybe you have a small like with the token engineering commons, the common stack got money, right? And some contributors were happy to be paid with to be rewarded with future stake, and so that they know that they're delaying their current, they're selling their time for a future benefit and taking more risk. And other contributors are focused. They're like, well, I need to pay the bills, so I need some kind of salary wage. And the people who took the risk had more future benefit, and the people who took the money now had less future benefit, but still some. And making these kinds of I like to see. I really believe that compensation is a one-on-one kind of thing. Everyone has a unique situation, and so their compensation should be tailored to that unique situation. So some people just don't need the money. They're early crypto. They don't need to be paid, but they should have a big future reward. And some people need the money now, and they need it because they have bills. And so that in the end, that to be fair to the system, you need to make sure they get less reward later. But and so these are tough decisions, and the hardest part is, okay, where do I get that initial capital? And maybe there's some people who you can raise from early, and that's how you pay some people. But minimizing the upfront costs and being very transparent about it is always important.
Sorry about that, guys. I'll be quiet for a little bit, see what happens.
I have one thing that I would like to suggest out of my own experience. One of the key elements is always ways to manage friction, not to avoid the fact that will be friction. And this in open source projects, as well as I come from, company experience, etc., is often something you try to decide by an automatic thing. That's the way to, in my experience, to destroy the structure. A good team has to be protected, but also able, like in a family, to express frustration in positive ways, and eventually to be able to have to access to mediation. It's very important. This when it's not there or is not considered in the design, it leads to bigger trouble along the way, because we are human, so we have passions, we make mistakes, we sometimes have to express our frustration in trolling or saying bad jokes at the wrong moment, hurting feelings. But also, there can be something bigger. And I find personally very good to have a board that is accessible and real, because the board not being involved in day-to-day decision, but just in consultancy, always put somebody that is very good in conflict resolution, and also possibly in using good ways of communicating and good training and have access to that experience. It's very important.
in continuation of that, like about the conflict in general, I recently started to look more into like sociology, and I read this really good book for sociological traditions about like the main schools of thought in that, and it's not even covering everything, but it's covering the main ideas in the space. And one of the first school in sociocracy is basically was introduced by Karl Marx, you know, and the class struggle and the theory of the conflict. And basically, all again, it's just one of the dimensions to look at. There are other three, you know, even more. But for sure, I also see a lot, you know, how kind of the conflict is the driving force for people to join the communities, to leave the communities, destroy the communities. But in any case, it's always this energy, like creative energy or sometimes destructive energy. And yeah, just thinking about like building a community from scratch. I had this experience when the COVID started, you know, and I just felt, you know, like something needs to be done, you know, to support the like country and so on. And that started as like a Telegram group and growing to like for like a few months that was like a community with many subgroups, volunteer working on all that. But I was trying to understand, you know, what kind of bonded those people who never saw each other before, you know, like they were complete, like most of the places, there was some like maybe what helped is were like mostly like friends of the friends, you know, so there was some level of trust, you know, people shared and so on. But in general, I kind of found out that the people who were like most active were the people who felt most like endangered in a way, you know, who were like, even if they were not, you know, like in the worst position, they were like super conscious about their health, you know, about the social security and so on. And here also in Taoist movement, it feels like sometimes ethos is like fuck capitalism, you know, and like ecology is dying and everything. So we're keeping this conflict inside of us to kind of get this energy to overcome friction, you know. So this is of course like looking only through this lens is really limiting, you know, because then it all falls into like we against them, identity politics and stuff like that, the classes, you know. But yeah, it's also like I can't avoid it in any community. Not seeing this kind of interactions is just impossible.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. What I meant was exactly ways to use friction in a positive way before it degenerative or escalates, but always keep it in mind that will happen and has the tendency to happen in when there is pressure. But yeah, that's what I meant. Thank you for. I'm interested in the book, by the way.
Natalie, can I ask you? I learned about you today. It sounded like you were involved in like a bajillion projects. I also know it's super early and you're drinking tons of coffee. It's okay if you don't want to.
Go ahead. It's 8 o'clock now. I'm good.
Oh, nice, you're back. So I guess in your experience, how much has it changed, or is community building the strategies behind it? Is it all the same? Is it just the same fundamental ideas? Are people motivated differently?
I'm gonna be spicy. At least for the last 2 years, although I've been kind of involved in the DAOs around for much longer than that, but I guess in theory, for the last 2 years, I've seen kind of DAOs start with the best of intentions and the whole like I'm an idealist and kumbaya Web3. But when the VCs and big capital came in, like that shifted very quickly. I remember one of the DAOs I was like heavily involved in, kind of contributing to and building community there, and they got a substantial amount of money, and then all of a sudden like we're gonna launch a new membership, and I'm like, well, I don't have access to the channel that I've been contributing to, and so this whole like journey of like things because they got all this capital, and I was like, and I also began to think about like I've contributed to a bunch of DAOs and kind of been there since like season 0 and started to build up the culture and community there, and then when capital came in, like I actually aside from the tokens didn't really get anything out of that. It left me kind of bitter and like salty in the beginning, and I realized if we continue to put capital before community and culture, we're going to continue to regurgitate these same like vulture capitalist like models. And I, at least the DAOs I've stayed in, have always like centered the human experience, always have centered community. And I know a lot of people talk about community, but for real community and building belonging and thinking about how they center equity as well. And like as capital came in, equity went out of the window, and it was the people who just to be very spicy, like didn't look like me, who became the core team or became the thing, and they're the ones who kind of benefited from a lot of our labor. And so there's a huge exploitation of labor in like Web3. And so and it no longer felt I'm not an idealist. I position myself as a realist and also like anti-capitalist. And so my ideals and like my perceptions of the world and my views have always been counter to kind of the crypto bro culture, like the larger kind of culture that exists here in crypto. And so there's this kind of clashing of like identity and clashing of those things, and we have to wrap our heads around, if nothing else, like equity and what that actually looks like, because I've just seen like exploitation on multiple levels in this space. The Brantley thing is a great example as well. Like people are willing to put their we're willing to chase clout at the expense of like people that come from my community and adjacent communities and kind of vote to keep them in. And it wasn't the same saying stuff 6 years ago. He doubled down and was still saying stuff like right before the vote and weeks, if not months, like after the vote. He continues to like double down on his perceptions and harassing people and like other things that I want to trigger people. But and this is not a singular incident. This is continued on, and like this snowball of like inequity and snowball of kind of situations like that it happens like almost every week something happens in that respect. And so I'm curious if we can get back to centering the human experience, centering like not the utopian stuff. I think that's very dangerous, but also thinking about how we are looking through a radical lens and lens of radical imagination to build something very different. Because I'm not trying to replicate the world that I come from or when I walk outside and have to deal with every single day. I'm trying to build something that looks very differently, and I don't no shade, but if we look at who's being funded, whether it's like impact DAOs or who's getting the most visibility, it's usually not people that look like me and overly labor in the space. It's the same people in the same circles. And so I'm curious if we can challenge ourselves to center equity and challenge ourselves to stop centering solely like capital. I think it's important we have to do the work, but at the same time, like how do we build new narratives and like think about how do we resource each other and share and collaborate and co-create together to like build these different things, because at this rate it's actually where the space is going is actually may not be scary for people who come from my community, but it is for me, and I've just experienced a lot of very interesting things in DAOs that I don't want to talk about at the moment.
Thank you, Natalie, for sharing.
Thank you for asking. Stark difference from 2 years ago to now.
I see. We're coming up on our time. Is there anything else anybody wants to add on to, any ideas? Sorry, not everyone got to speak.
Yeah, so maybe we can try to summarize our like discussion in 1 or 2 sentences, what we can kind of come to from this.
I think personally, one of the largest lessons is this idea of like, being community first, equity first, as long as possible. And while there's this concept of legitimacy and being on chain, and just there's a lot of traps. I think there's a lot of thinking that has to go into designing these things properly. Are there any DAOs or projects where the capital's never involved and they still leverage technology, the Web3 technology? And how do these guys motivate themselves just from the final product? I need to learn a lot about this space. I apologize.
There are, but they don't really last very long, because honestly, if you're just going to do that, Web2 tooling works better than Web3. So like just use that. But if you want to manage crypto, then Web3 tooling is critical. So but there are, of course, projects that have tried to just be a reputation DAO to vote on things that are, I remember a couple experiments in Aragon, and you could even say Proof of Humanity doesn't have much of a treasury, but they have a UBI token, so it's still, but anyway, I actually have to run to another call. So I really loved this chat though. And I think, Natalie, thank you for going out on a limb to say that's your side of things, because I think it's also understated in the DAO space. And thank you, Adam, for facilitating.
Absolutely. Thank you, Griff. Take care.
Thank you. So do you want to move to the next topic then? I don't see
Yeah.
all. Huh?
I gotta use the bathroom real fast. I apologize, guys.
Yeah, sure, no
I
worries.
apologize.
I gotta build it into the community DAO. How do I legitimately go to the bathroom so you guys
Yeah,
can
go,
understand?
go, 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 go.
Yeah, you fulfilled your role as the organizer. Yeah, so we have 2 topics on the agenda about the privacy in DAOs and how to explain trusted seeds to non-Web3 tweets. Maybe in general, even we can maybe extend it to how do we explain whatever we do. Like trusted seed is still, this cloud of senses and so on, but we have some feeling about where it's going. Yeah, so maybe we can stick then with this topic about explaining what's happening. It's also really important to my work as well, because in the ministry we run our program for educating people on crypto and how to avoid scam, how to leverage the opportunities and everything. But like still it's a few percentage of people using crypto, and lots of people are just outside of it, and they don't trust it so much, they don't understand it so much. So I don't know. I'm doing a small intro. Like, do we stick with a explanation, right? We want to maybe.
Yeah, please. You're the expert, right? No one better.
Yeah, I just want to jump in. Maybe I have a suggestion, because I want to take this opportunity also to get the people's perception of the trustee before we explain it ourselves. Because I'm curious how we present ourselves to the community. So maybe before Max explains what trustee is, maybe we can pass around and hear from everyone what they think. And there's no wrong or right answer here, probably. But just like, what's your general perception of the trustee, and maybe we can clarify those perceptions later on.
Great point,
I'll start off.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I was honestly very confused. I found the entire refi regen space overnight. I wasn't sure if Common Stack and Trusted Seed were the same thing, or if Trusted Seed was some sort of tooling or a sub part of the trusted of the Common Stack. But then when I dug into it a little bit more, it seemed like a more of a general community for the concepts behind the commons, and maybe that the Common Stack was the machinery, perhaps. The Trusted Seed was the think tank. And I would still get confused as far as the interactions with Giveth and some other projects. But now I know it's just an awesome group of really great people that know awesome stuff and are super helpful. But I was honestly very, very confused in the beginning, but I was so brand new to the space.
Well, I was involved maybe 3 years ago and I still don't understand it. I still don't get it exactly. I met some people personally, had a good vibe with it. I was in it with the game, so it was a sort of a very, if you want, conceptual but practical way to enter the space with design, and allowing people to feel involved and design the space together. So this goes also in the direction of Max. I mean, when you put yourself to explain something, it's you always imply a sort of pyramid in which you know something and you're explaining to people. If you are doing something together, it's a little bit more, you can be the coordinator, the facilitator, you still run a little bit the agenda, but just because you design a situation in which the interaction works, and then people with more facility brings value to the table. In the commons, a lot of people has values, even if they don't know crypto. Especially if you want to run a commons in the real world. Let's say real, meaning this mix with digital and infrastructural and broken kind of world we're living in, right? So it can be your neighborhood becomes also Berlin neighborhood because a friend of yours is there, and then becomes also your neighborhood, somehow. In this space, you really need a lot of different roles, and every role is a richness. It brings value to the stake. And it's very true what Natalie was saying. It also corresponds to my experience that there is a lot of exploitation the moment the money starts going. The money is a thing to be handled with care, because there's a toxic power attached to it, especially financial money, because it's money that is created. It's not extracted like from the value flows of real thing in the real world. It's created somehow. So you cannot play poker with the finances. They always outwin you, right? So, well, to consider the whole thing, I wouldn't worry too much. At least you are in good company of not understanding how all the things are connected together in this space. I think it's too early to understand it. It's more important to try to do the first steps, and there are also my steps. I'm at the same level. I mean, first steps in trying to find your own way and let it run. Don't hold too much on your own first attempt, because it's going to change. Maybe it's going to die, but you're going to have another one, because the field is really very new. But it has some opportunities that goes in the right direction. Also, for Natalie to respond to her point, of course, every new system mimics what people already knows in the space. So structures of power is not because you are on the blockchain that you don't have backstabbing in a community. It's human communities. Also, if they're on chain, you can write on chain a blatant something very bad, like we saw so many examples of. So this is my take, at least.
Thank you. At some moment when we were basically with Robin, we were chatting for almost a year around digital servant leadership and development of this stuff, and that slowly also transformed into this Unconference. And I'm just curious, Robin, if you will, can you share what do you think Trusted Seed is after all of this?
It's probably on the bus, but
okay,
he could educate everyone on the bus as well.
Yes. Yes, I'm just pretending. Yeah, like I'm talking about teaching the startup for everybody. Natalie, do you have some opinions what Trusted Seed is?
Do you have an opinion about anything? That's the real question. I'm still trying to figure out. I just recently joined Trusted Seed, although I know like Token Engineering Commons and ran into some like common folks. But what I have found is I'm in like the most amount of Discord that you can possibly be in. But this is like I have this one kind of high up in the hierarchy, and what I've experienced, at least the conversations I've been able to join, and like what I've been reading and kind of connecting with, is that most folks are, I hope, here to like learn and connect and figure out how they're building things, or kind of exchanging ideas, and like just the idea of like being able to be in a genuine space where people are exchanging like real ideas and not getting caught up in kind of the hype of Web3 is and not saying that there aren't people here that are, but for the most part, what I've experienced has been that. And it's actually been quite refreshing. And so yeah.
Thank you. If we come to the point where we will explain what it is, well, when starting to work with like some new teams, or organization that sometimes take me for some work, and we speak about the strategy and direction. One of the questions I kind of pose to the founders is like, why are you named like that? And this is basically like sometimes the meta idea, even if it's wrong, people say, oh, it's outdated, but it also gives like some history, to why, why it exists and so on. So again, in the most general term, like trusted and seed, the seed refers to that narrative where exactly like when a new system mimic the like culture of people that joined it, there's a dominating culture and so on. Like we're speaking about some seed, seed people, seed capital, whatever, like that we would like to kind of cultivate, something that was cultivated specifically for some purpose, and that is a good culture, and that those people, like we call, like we try to identify the personas in our community, and we specifically like two personas that are mostly impact related. We call them like angels and stewards. Angels who are more like have a bit more money than time, stewards who have more time than money, but those people who already do something in the direction of impact. But also there's like some we call them megalodons and freelancers, people who also like kind of maybe not that driven, or comparatively not that driven by impact, but they still are providing some blood and energy for things. So, but yeah, specifically angels and stewards, it seems like developing the expertise of those people, collecting them together, even for like a support, or like supporting each other with knowledge, with emotions, with like hope and direction, that relies to the seed idea. And the trusted is that that all of this idea about reputation, about some process of approval of people who join here and so on. When we just started the conference, one of the participants shared this trust game. I can find it, but it was really small, fun, interactive online game. It told the story about like the First World War, where I don't remember, was it like a French versus German or something, like two like parties who were like one against each other, like in the trenches. But then they gathered for the Christmas, to celebrate. So they like left their guns and then they celebrated and returned back to continue the war afterwards, despite any orders from the commanders and so on. But and the whole game was about what enabled that, and that. In the prisoner's dilemma case, we know that the typical outcome is like both parties will sell each other as soon as possible because this is mathematically driven and so on. But it only works for this one-time scenario. People have continuous interaction with each other, like we have, this calls and discussion and support. It creates this, level of trust inside of it. Again, any community is trying to develop this belonging and trust. But we're trying to specifically address this both right people and people who can be a network, together. So this is why, this is why. But then this is like what's next, right? As the landscape changes. And yeah, I presented a bit about strategy. It also answers a bit like what we then do. It's going to be like a networking hub. One of the distinguishing features is like we did some like offline events as well, but one of the things that it seems to be like a huge change also with the pandemic and everything is like this digital collaboration. And we speak about servant leaders, but specifically digital servant leaders, leaders who could navigate this complex space as we see today on the networking. Sometimes it breaks in some in some places. So it's really a challenge for most of the people, organizations, and whatever whatever happens with our group, I always look past that into like what people would take with them. Like all those leadership program incubators, they not always are successful at the moment, but my experience tells going through that enriches what further on generations of new organizations created. So that's a bit of like my perspective on this, and then yeah, we just do whatever we can for that. If we need to do Unconference, we do Unconference. We do reputation layer, we do this and that, and we want to practice self-organization. We're also part of the Give It Galaxy. It's something like, as we spawned a bit, like addressing the question of like a relation with the common stack. As initially, that was like one cell, but as the complexity has grown, and also there's like legal boundaries needed to be established as we wanted like its investment thesis, and thus we wanted to kind of separate white and furry things from experimental gray areas, and the team has grown. We like kind of separated, but then now as a new cell of the organism, we especially like most of that is like connected by grief as glue. We even like once somebody told that it's kind of like we call it Give It Galaxy, but it can be also grief-averse or something. But yeah, working with TC, Give It, even sometimes it's not a clear what exactly we do, but thinking about the ecosystem, we thought that what kind of capital we provide is the human capital. The like people with like money, potentially like angels, but for any ecosystem, inflow of new, energetic, talented people is like crucial. So while they focus on supporting other commons, we're trying to support our ecosystem first of all, with that inflow. But then again, it's always expanding. Like we thought about us as a team, like for the whole year, we were thinking who are we outside of common stack. How do we separate? What would be our vision? Now we're thinking in terms of Give It Galaxy, but then it's also Web3 for public goods, and they are extending like collaborative economy and so on and so on. So it's always like a growing complexity that leads us to chaos in a way. I'll stop there as well, and so maybe Ivy or Amy would also like to add on this.
Yeah, chaos is a teacher, so it's always welcome.
I think I can also share a little bit of history from about Trusted from Common Stack. So although probably already maybe Max already mentioned also that Trusted was initially created by Common Stack to have this group of people who will support the who will provide financial and cultural support to the future commons. And So when I started joining, if you know the process of the hatching a commons, so in the early stages, in the early phase of launching a commons, it's the trusted seed who's participating in the governance. And we don't want, and when we launch a commons to launch a commons, we don't want to just get like let anybody get involved. You know, we want to make sure that people who participate in the governance are really in it for because they believe in the mission and that they're not just like airdrop seekers. That's why they created the trusted seed, and then I made it into a association because we want to protect the people who participate in hatching a commons to be protected. But I think legal protection is like it's not very accurate because we provide protection, but we provide legal mutual aid. So that's the little bit history of the what about the benefits of the of being a member of the trusted seed. And then like what Max said, that when complexities have grown, so we started to find out solutions on how we can provide more value to the community without, because we feel like the membership fees like stopping people, it's like a blocker for people to join this amazing community, right? So we're finding being more creative with how we want to get more people involved and also serve a wider community. So so when Max presented this idea, at first I was hesitant because I was so committed to the idea that no, trust is like it's only for governance participation, it's only for commons, you know. But then I understand that we want to give more value without limiting ourselves to the membership fee. You know, the membership fees or the membership shouldn't define the trustee, but the value that this community provides to other communities and other individual actors in the space. Like we want, for example, now in this conference, we want to help more stewards to grow and to learn. And so we want to make it as open as possible and make it like provide like this like a public good, you know. And this is the best that we can do for now because we're a small team, but we're hoping to expand more and see how we can help more mission value aligned individuals in this community. So I don't know, you maybe have anything to share?
I'm a little bit distracted. I'm sorry for that, but yes, I can have something to share. Why not? I'm really in love with Trusted. I really love our people. I think we are together creating something good for public good, and I really enjoy being part of this. And always my invitation is to be part and like to interact with us, to participate in our activities. So in that way, you can not only learn from others, but also to engage with them and to be part of a community that is trying to do the best for helping these early region economies to succeed and other projects. Even if you need help with your own projects, we can help you with to connect with the right person, to whatever you need, we can try to find a way to help you and achieve your dreams or your goals with your projects. So that's what I want to say right now.
I also want to add that I have this dream for Trusted Seed. You know that we have this trust score or like a reputation token, and we've used it in the so far we've used it in the governance for hatching the commons, the TEC, and probably the future commons, right? But I feel like my dream for Trusted Seed for our community is to get involved in other DAOs governance because they trust our people. You know, we believe that whatever value or whatever knowledge and expertise that the members of the Trusted Seed have will bring value to their own community. So I hope more communities will invite Trusted Seed to participate in their governance because they trust they trust Trusted Seed because they believe in our capabilities and our values. So that's it for me.
It's like public goods all the way down. Like you guys are a public good for public goods, you know, building more public goods to support public goods. Can never have too many public goods for the common good. I mean, all that was incredibly helpful. I think I could actually start to describe this to my family, my friends. I guess there's like an abstraction layer up more around sort of the Giveth galaxy, and it's a little bit hard to explain, you know, supporting public goods and the common good by using Web3 technology. But I could leave that as a sidebar or struggle with that concept, but have a better, clearer picture of, you know, what this small group Trusted Seed, where it comes from, what was it built for, what does it do now, etc. So I appreciate all of that. Anybody else still confused, or you know, non-Trusted Seed people have any? I know Federico, he lives in a constant state of confusion on purpose because he's always learning. I love this guy. Does anybody else want to ask these guys questions? Or if it's clear or unclear? I think Robin's on the bus.
I thought it was very clarifying discussion in the sense. Thank you for joking about me. I find it very sweet. You got me. But yeah, it's funny because I was thinking two things. The first, I'm a little bit fixed with organization which there are roles and not ranks, and roles are fluid. So you know, you pick something, you do the best of your abilities, and you leave it back you put it back on the table. And that day you've been the cook. The next day you are the organizer. You know, I like fluidity, and this is a sort of thing that I like to put on the table in this sense. And another thing I was thinking of in terms really about this Trusted Seed, about trust, and it's a little bit my limit into the metrics because in my experience it's cultural. So some cultures you put out yes, you've been good, and some culture you keep it in between the lines. It's very cultural, and so it's something that which the design of a sort of objectified way to say objective in the sense of objective way to measure trust or measure merit or measure contribution always puts me a little bit in difficulty, because I can find counterexample or example in which this thing can be exploited by a bigger party or a hostile party, especially in the commons. I make a very simple example is about information about free houses in a small village. It's in my case was very fast weaponized by a minority to try to make gentrification of the little village. Certain type of data that is very useful inside a small circle can be exploited by somebody who has more resources outside the circle in a very easy way, almost standardized. So you know, you arrive, you buy 3 houses, and you sell them in 3 years' time, and you make 30% more. And can be very destructive. If you work in the commons, you are actually using resources that should stay in the commons, and instead historically are easily gentrified or brought out of the commons. So yeah, these are the two little things that I'm going to keep thinking about, and it's a little bit my takeoff, just to I was trying to bring on the table what I was mumbling in my head while you were talking.
Thank you. So I guess if you guys could put it in one sentence, which would be very challenging, but learning how to teach something, they say, is the best way to learn, I suppose. Or so if you could sum it up in a sentence, what the Trusted Seed does, and I'll write it down and see, and I'll try all of them on my friends who they're like Web 1 native. I guess trying to stay as Web 1 native, almost not even Web 2 or whatever. I'm just being jokey, but something I can try on people super duper unfamiliar with the space. Max, you want to kick it off?
Well, there is a short answer and then there's the right answer, right? But yeah, it's a network of trusted people working in Web3 for public goods. Then there's question, of course, like public goods, Web3, but at least on that, it's a network of trusted people who do some good stuff. If you're talking to a 3-year-old, that's maybe the shortest answer.
Oh, that's great. You want to pass it to someone?
Federico wants to say something.
No, I got this idea that what it would be nice was to have a guild, like in the Middle Age. So a guild of people that are after the realization of that radical transparency is possible. So before Web3 enablers inventions was impossible to have radical transparency. And now it's possible. So everybody was talking in the universe about how to self-organize and manage trust, etc. Now the instrument is there. Everything has to be invented. So there is a guild of people that are busy with this, and an attempt to imagine a guild of people that can validate this process or discuss this process together.
I think I can go next. Well, Max's description is hard to read, but I think when I try to explain to my friends what Trusted Seed is, I don't say that because they always think I work for Trusted Seed and they think, oh, is that your company? So I don't say it's the company, but I say it's like oh, it's like a group of people, or just like a group of friends. I feel like let's just say we're a group of friends who are working on different projects that are all value aligned. So I think that's just one way how I can describe it. Easy.
I was trying to pick the right words, but there's no right or wrong, too wrong answer here. Well, when I'm trying to explain what Trusted Seed is, like very sweet and short, is we are a community that try to support other individuals or communities, culturally or financially, with their goals. And pass it to you, Nathan.
I'm chasing after my nephew, so yeah.
Okay, so Robin is there. Oh, he said he can't speak, right? Alex.
Yeah. Hi. So we are trying to say what Trusted Seed is for us and for other people. So I would say Trusted Seed is a community of people. I mean, the question is, how would I explain it to people that is not part of it?
Yeah, very basic, simple, possibly non-Web3.
So yeah, I would say it's like well, I'm thinking in Spanish though, but like there is a term that is caldo de cultivo, which is like maybe Inesi, someone can help me.
Say it in Spanish, and we can translate here.
Yeah, I'm thinking in caldo de cultivo, which literally means like
oh yeah, like compost.
So the idea is that when you have like in biology and in some areas like an environment where things that are alive can multiply very easily, right? The catalyst effect. So in a way, I think it's like making a space where people with some similar values can co-create their projects in a more peer-to-peer way, right? I think something like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to feed all these into ChatGPT. Probably not the direct Spanish but who knows? I mean, this thing's amazing, right? And so I'll try to get the results both in English and Spanish. But we're right on time, I think, for this session. This was super helpful. I enjoyed this one for sure because I've been talking about this for the past, since we started. And I just it's hard to explain, but it's amazing. I'm so excited about this stuff. And so I feel a lot more equipped. And I think it was cool to hear the long version of what it means to everybody, the history, and also get it really boiled down to individual senses. So thank you.
Okay, so by schedule we have like a 15